Nobody goes broke from one $20 purchase, but millions of people quietly lose thousands because of one. That is what makes it dangerous. It does not look like a financial decision. It looks like coffee on a tired morning. It looks like food delivery after a long day. It looks like a small Amazon order, a quick app purchase, a little upgrade, a snack, a ride, a subscription, a small reward for surviving the week. It feels too normal to question, too small to respect, too harmless to track. And that is exactly how a 20 habit becomes a $2,000 problem. Not because one purchase destroys your budget, not because enjoying your life is wrong, not because every small expense is secretly evil. The real problem is more subtle than that. A $20 habit becomes expensive because your brain does not experience it as a pattern. It experiences it as a moment, and moments feel innocent. When someone spends $900 on a phone, they usually pause. They compare models. They read reviews. They think about whether they can afford it. They may even feel guilty before buying it. But when the same person spends 23 or 4 times a week, there is no dramatic pause. There is no big emotional warning. There is no feeling of danger. The number is small enough to pass through the mind without resistance. That is where the trap begins. Money does not care how small something felt when you bought it. Money only counts what happened. It does not care that you were tired. It does not care that it was just once. It does not care that the purchase felt normal. It simply records the pattern. A 20 order once is nothing. A 20 order 3 times a week is 60. In a month, that becomes around 240. Keep that rhythm for several months. And now the habit is no longer a small treat. It is rent money. It is a credit card payment. It is an emergency fund that never formed. It is the reason someone looks at their bank account and says, "Where did my money go?" The strange part is that nothing feels dramatic while it is happening. There is no single moment where the problem announces itself. There is no one purchase that feels like a disaster. That is why small habits are harder to control than big purchases. Big purchases feel like events. Small purchases feel like life. And modern life is full of them. The coffee before work, the delivery fee after work, the quick ride because walking feels inconvenient, the streaming subscription you forgot about, the premium app that only costs a few dollars more, the snack run, the "I might need this later" purchase, the small upgrade that makes the basic version feel incomplete. Each one has a story. Each one can be defended. Each one sounds reasonable when judged alone. But bad financial patterns rarely look bad when you inspect one piece of them. They become clear only when you zoom out. This is why people often underestimate small spending. They think in single transactions, while their bank account lives in repeated behavior. The mind says, "It was only $20." The account says, "It happened 100 times." That gap between how spending feels and how spending adds up is where a lot of financial stress is born. Most people do not lose control of their money because they are reckless every day. They lose control because their spending becomes invisible. They know about the big bills. They know rent is coming. They know the car payment is due. They know groceries are expensive. But the small habits hide between the obvious expenses. They do not arrive as one large charge. They arrive as little scratches. One scratch is harmless. 100 scratches change the whole surface. The psychology behind this is simple but powerful. A big purchase asks for permission. A small purchase slips through. The brain treats it less like a financial decision and more like a mood decision. You are not buying food delivery only because of hunger. You are buying relief. You are buying convenience. You are buying a break from cooking. You are buying the feeling that at least one thing today can be easy. That is why the habit becomes hard to stop. The money is only one part of it. The purchase is attached to an emotional reward. After a stressful day, $20 can feel like comfort. After a boring day, it can feel like stimulation. After a hard week, it can feel like proof that you are not just working and paying bills. The purchase becomes a tiny emotional reset button. And because it works in the moment, the brain remembers it. This is how habits become automatic. Not because the purchase is logical, but because it solves a feeling quickly. The problem is that quick emotional solutions are often expensive when repeated. A person may say, "I deserve this," and maybe they do. The issue is not whether they deserve a coffee, a meal, a ride, or a small reward. The issue is whether that reward is still worth it when it quietly takes over the money that was supposed to build stability. Because the first time you buy it, it feels like freedom. The 100th time, it can start to feel like a leak. And leaks are more dangerous than explosions because they are easier to ignore. A financial explosion is obvious. A job loss, a medical bill, a car repair, a major emergency. Everyone understands why those hurt. But a financial leak is different. It does not shock you. It slowly lowers the level of control you feel over your life. You still earn money. You still pay bills. You still make purchases. But somehow, nothing builds. That is when people start blaming the wrong thing. They think the problem is their salary. Sometimes it is. They think the problem is inflation. Often that matters too. They think the problem is that everything is expensive. That can be true. But even when those things are real, small repeated habits can make the pressure worse because they quietly remove the margin. And margin is what keeps money from becoming stressful. Margin is the space between what comes in and what goes out. It is the gap that allows someone to handle a surprise expense without panic. It is the room to save, invest, breathe, think, and make better decisions. When small habits eat that margin, life starts to feel more expensive than it actually is. Not because the 20 purchase was huge, because it became normal. Normal is the most expensive category in personal finance. Once something becomes normal, you stop evaluating it. You stop asking whether it is worth it. You stop noticing how often it happens. It no longer feels like a choice. It feels like part of your lifestyle. And lifestyle is difficult to cut because people do not experience lifestyle as spending. They experience it as identity. This is why a person can cancel one purchase but struggle to cancel the pattern. They are not only giving up the item, they are giving up the version of themselves that item supports. The person who orders food because they are busy. The person who buys coffee because they are productive. The person who takes rides because their time matters. The person who treats themselves because life is hard. None of those identities are bad, but they become costly when they are funded by automatic habits instead of conscious decisions. Companies understand this better than most consumers do. Modern spending systems are built to reduce friction. Saved cards, one-click checkout, free trials, auto renewals, delivery apps, loyalty points, limited time offers, buy now, pay later, personalized recommendations. The easier it is to spend, the less time the brain has to object. In the past, buying something required a little effort. You had to take out cash. You had to physically go somewhere. You could see the money leave your hand. That friction created awareness. Today, the purchase can happen faster than the doubt. Tap, confirm, done. That speed changes behavior. When spending becomes effortless, the emotional reward arrives before the financial reality has time to speak. This is not an accident. Businesses want the purchase to feel painless. Pain makes people think. Friction makes people pause. A pause creates the chance to say no. So the best consumer platforms remove the pause. They do not need to force you. They only need to make spending feel natural at the exact moment you are most likely to do it. Hungry? Here is delivery. Bored? Here is shopping. Tired? Here is convenience. Lonely? Here is entertainment. Stressed? Here is a small reward. The 20 habit survives because it attaches itself to situations that repeat. You do not get tired once. You do not feel stressed once. You do not feel hungry once. You do not feel bored once. So the spending has many chances to return. That is why willpower alone usually fails. People try to fight the purchase, but they do not study the trigger. They say, I need to stop spending, but they do not ask, what feeling keeps sending me back? A habit is not just what you buy. It is when you buy it, why you buy it, and what the purchase does for you emotionally. This is where the real $2,000 problem begins. At first, the cost looks simple. You spend $20. But many small habits come with hidden multipliers. A delivery order is not only the food. It may include higher menu prices, taxes, service fees, delivery fees, and tips. A small online purchase may lead to another item because the platform recommends something related. A subscription may begin as a cheap monthly charge, then become one of several automatic payments you stop noticing. A small upgrade can train you to see the basic option as uncomfortable. The original 20 opens the door. The surrounding costs walk in quietly. This is how spending ecosystems work. One habit creates a second habit. The second habit creates expectations. The expectations create a lifestyle. And once a lifestyle is formed, the cost no longer feels optional. Someone does not just buy takeout. They become someone who does not cook on busy nights. They do not just buy coffee. They become someone whose morning feels incomplete without it. They do not just subscribe to one service. They become someone who expects every problem to have a paid convenience attached to it. Again, the issue is not that any one of these choices is wrong. The issue is that repeated choices start making decisions for you. The habit becomes the default. And defaults are powerful because they require no argument. You do not have to convince yourself to do the default. You only have to convince yourself to break it. That is much harder. This is why people defend small spending so strongly. They are not defending the math. They are defending the comfort, the convenience, and the emotional story behind it. It is only 20. I work hard. Everything is expensive anyway. This is my one little thing. At least I am not wasting money on something bigger. Those statements are not always lies. Sometimes they are completely understandable, but they can still hide the truth. A purchase can be emotionally valid and financially damaging at the same time. That is the uncomfortable part. Personal finance is not difficult only because of numbers. It is difficult because money decisions often come wrapped in feelings that make sense. People do not overspend because they are stupid. They overspend because spending often solves a real feeling faster than discipline does. Cooking takes energy. Budgeting takes attention. Waiting takes patience. Saying no takes emotional strength. Spending, especially small spending, offers an immediate answer. The cost comes later. And when the cost finally appears, it does not look like the original habit. It looks like stress. It looks like a credit card balance that will not go down. It looks like being unable to save. It looks like delaying an important goal. It looks like earning decent money but still feeling behind. That is why the $2,000 problem is not only the $2,000. The deeper problem is what that money could have done. It could have started an emergency fund. It could have paid off debt. It could have covered insurance, car repairs, medical costs, or a month of groceries. It could have created breathing room. It could have reduced the need to rely on a credit card. It could have become the difference between a surprise expense being annoying and a surprise expense becoming a crisis. This is the part people often miss. Money has more than one value. There is the value of what you buy with it today, and there is the value of the options it gives you tomorrow. A 20 habit does not only buy the thing, it may also sell a little piece of future flexibility. At first, that sounds dramatic, but think about how people describe financial pressure. They rarely say, "I made one terrible purchase." More often they say, "I do not know where it all went." That sentence is the signature of invisible spending. When money disappears without a clear memory, it means the purchases were not meaningful enough to remember but frequent enough to matter. That is one of the worst financial combinations. Forgettable in the moment, expensive in the total. This is why tracking small habits can feel almost embarrassing. When someone finally looks at the numbers, they may not see a villain. They see ordinary life: coffee, food, apps, rides, random items, tiny conveniences, little rewards. Nothing looks insane, and yet the total feels shocking. The shock does not come from discovering one bad decision. It comes from discovering how many decisions were made without awareness. Awareness is the beginning of control. Not guilt, not panic, not extreme cutting. Awareness. Because the solution is not to remove every enjoyable thing from your life. That usually fails, because a life with no pleasure is not a budget. It is a punishment, and people eventually rebel against punishment. The better question is not, how do I stop spending 20 forever? The better question is, which 20 purchases are actually worth becoming part of my life? That question changes everything. Some small purchases are worth it. Maybe a coffee ritual genuinely improves your morning. Maybe a subscription teaches you something. Maybe food delivery once a week protects your energy. Maybe a small convenience saves time during a difficult season. The goal is not to hate spending. The goal is to stop letting repeated spending hide from you. A conscious habit can be managed. An invisible habit manages you. So the first step is to expose the pattern. Choose one category, not your whole life. Food delivery, coffee, random online shopping, ride apps, subscriptions, snacks. Pick the one that feels small but happens often. Then ask one simple question. How often did this happen last month? Not how much did it feel like, not whether each purchase was reasonable, not whether you deserved it, just how often. Frequency tells the truth. After that, multiply the habit forward. What does it cost in 1 month? What does it become in 6 months? What does it become in a year? And then ask the question most people avoid. If this showed up as one yearly bill, would I still choose it? This is the test that reveals the real value. Many habits survive because they are split into tiny payments. They would not survive if they arrived as one invoice. A person may ignore $20 at a time, but if the same habit appeared as a $2,000 bill, they would suddenly become very analytical. That does not mean the habit must disappear. It means it has to earn its place. If it is worth $2,000, keep it proudly and adjust somewhere else. But if it is not worth $2,000, then the problem was never your income, your discipline, or your luck. The problem was that a small habit was living in your budget without permission. Breaking that pattern does not require becoming cheap. It requires adding friction back into a system designed to remove it. Delete the saved card from the app. Make yourself wait 10 minutes before buying. Set a weekly limit instead of deciding every day. Move the app off your home screen. Cancel the subscription and see if you miss it. Create a rule that delivery only happens on specific days. Keep the habit, but reduce the frequency. Replace the emotional trigger with something cheaper that still solves the feeling. The point is not to make spending impossible. The point is to make it conscious again. Because the real danger of the 20 habit is not the number. It is the absence of a decision. When you choose something clearly, you can own the cost. When you repeat something automatically, the cost owns part of you. That is the difference between enjoyment and leakage. Enjoyment gives you something you value. Leakage takes money while giving you almost nothing memorable in return. And this is where the whole title becomes clearer. A $20 habit becomes a $2,000 problem, not because $20 is a lot of money. It becomes a problem because small spending is easy to emotionally approve, easy to digitally repeat, easy to forget, and easy to defend. It hides behind normal life. It hides behind tiredness. It hides behind convenience. It hides behind, I deserve it. It hides behind the fact that each purchase seems too small to matter. But money is not lost only in big decisions. Sometimes it disappears through habits that never felt important enough to question. That is why the first sentence matters so much. Nobody goes broke from one 20 purchase. But if that purchase becomes a pattern, if the pattern becomes a default, and if the default becomes part of your identity, then the real cost is no longer 20. The real cost is the money you never saved, the debt you never escaped, the stress you kept carrying, and the feeling that your income was never enough, even when the leak was happening quietly in the background. The solution is not to be afraid of small pleasures. It is to stop confusing small with harmless, because small is only small once. After that, it becomes a rhythm. And once something becomes a rhythm, it starts shaping your financial life more than you think. A 20 habit becomes a 2000 problem when you stop seeing it as a decision and start experiencing it as normal. And the moment you see the pattern clearly, the habit loses some of its power. Because money does not remember how harmless a purchase felt. It only remembers how many times you made it. If you enjoyed this style of video, subscribe for more smart money content.